Hey, it's Biddy Penny. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to play with making watercolor backgrounds for ATC cards. That's artist trading cards. I am making a bunch to give at Paper Ganza, and so today I'm going to make 18 with you. And I'm just going to cut these up real quick. And today's video is really going to focus on the backgrounds. So I've got my images cut, and I loved this color palette so much. I mean, there's a couple, I think there's kind of two color palettes going on here that I took a picture of it with my phone to save it for inspiration later. And I'm going to bring out my Kueratake watercolors. These are not Kueratake, but the other ones I'm going to use are. But they work the same. They're beautiful. They're just wonderful. And Kueratake is different than other watercolors. They're almost like a gouache, to be honest. They're not as transparent. They're more opaque than most watercolors. And I love them. The color payoff is the best in the game as far as I'm concerned. And you can water them down to be more transparent, but they're really an opaque watercolor. They're Japanese, and you can purchase them on Amazon. I'll find some links for you down below. I'm also using my Canson XL watercolor paper, which is 140 pounds or 300 GSM, 300 grams. It's awesome. It's really super thick, and so it's going to be my base for my artist trading cards today. Artist trading cards measure 2.5 by 3.5. So on the 9-inch side, I'm going to cut my strips down to 2.5 inches. So I'm going to be able to get 3 strips that are 2.5 by 12 inches. And then I'll rotate that and cut those down to 3.5. So from one sheet of 9 by 12 watercolor paper, I can get 9 bases, which is ended up being really serendipitous with the way that I used this digital. And I needed 18 bases. I had 18 pieces of ephemera. These are the watercolor brushes I'm using today. You don't need these, but I know people are going to ask, so wanted to show you up close and personal. We've got an MD. It's basically a great big mop brush. And then these 2 flat brushes. This is a 3/4, and I didn't even see the other one. I think it's a 1-inch flat brush. So anyways, these are like the nicest watercolor brushes that I have. They're not even top of the line or anything, but they're my nicest ones. So I always take care of them. Okay, I only cut 1 sheet of paper, and I'm going to show you 2 different ways to approach some abstract watercolor backgrounds. One way is with your ATC cards already cut. So I'm taking my largest mop brush and the color I want the most of, which is this orange. And I'm just doing abstract coloring and coloring the background of each of these. I dipped back into my paint. I want more of that opacity, and I'm just adding that into these images a little bit more, adding a little bit more orange. This is a really vibrant orange. It's beautiful. It's from their Art Nouveau palette that I love. And so I've got now a good layer of the orange that I used that mop brush with. So I'm going to clean up my brush. When you have nice brushes, take care of them. Clean them and don't leave them in your water. Just clean the tip, clean it really nice, take it out of the water, set it to the side, lay it flat to dry, and they'll last you much longer. So now I'm going to take this like 1-inch flat brush with the blue, and I'm going to go in and make some interesting marks and, just play around with where I'm laying them. All of my paint is really wet right now, and that's great because I want some granulation, and I know that orange and blue are complementary colors. When you mix complementary colors, you get brown, but not in the way I'm doing it today. And I actually don't ever mind, for the most part. It depends on what I'm working on, but for like today's palette, I don't care if I get a little bit of brown or a little bit of mud. But you have to work with your consistency of like how much paint you load on your brush, how much water you load on your brush. But this is very free. Don't worry about that when you're making these for the most part. because these are abstract backgrounds. I brought in my little 3/4 of an inch flat brush now that has a rounded tip, and I'm using this beautiful green, this olive green, to make some marks with it. And again, I just play around with placement, and I'm using the brush in its natural form to make marks. So think about that when you're grabbing brushes and you're wanting to work on a project like this. If you have a variety of brush tips, that can serve you well with mark making, because you just use the brush in its natural form to create different marks. So like the 1-inch brush with the blue created those broad kind of blocks, and then the smaller brush with a rounded tip is creating a different look. I then dipped my mop brush in a lot of water and gold paint, also Kueratake Watercolor, and I'm splashing all that around. I like to do this when everything's wet because look, you get a forced granulation when you add like a mica'd watercolor and all your paint is wet. It just makes it beautiful. Okay, so this is going to be the background for these boho girls. Now, here's the second way of doing this. I have one sheet of 9x12 watercolor paper, the same one, Canson XL watercolor paper. The only difference here is I have not cut it up. I'm going to take the same palette and I am going to do fun mark making. I'm not thinking at all right now. I am just putting paint on paper, playing. I will clean up that brush as well and then move on, and I'm going to grab the same brush this time with the blue, and now I'm going to fill in some gaps and mix some of these things up and let the two colors mingle. Let them meet and hang out and mingle a little bit. And then I'm going to bring in a different brush now. I'm going to bring in the 1-inch flat brush, and I'm going to make some stripes with the green, and I'm not letting anything dry. This paint is pooling, especially that blue one in places, like at the top there, it's just a pool of blue watercolor. And I'm totally fine with that because I really want all of these to kind of merge and react to one another. And I even dumped some of the watery paint from the half pan on there. One of the great things about the half pans is you can use these large brushes on them very easily. So I'm bringing in my mop brush again, and now I have this Kueratake, I believe this is Kueratake, the pearlescent. And I'm going to pull in this pink because, like I said, it's kind of two different palettes, and one of them had quite a bit of pink in it. So I wanted to bring that in and incorporate that. I'm again doing this when all the paint is wet. And then I made myself a cup of tea and let things start to dry. This one wasn't quite done. I drank some more tea, and then finally all of my little backgrounds are done, and I love how these turned out. So these are the ones that we did intentionally. I would say if you want a more controlled result, then do this result or do this approach and this process. And then when they're really dry, you can go ahead and kind of reshape them and get them flattened out a bit more, since this is your base. This is your card. I'm not gluing this to anything. You could if you wanted to, but those are my cards. And now this sheet needs to be absolutely 100% dry before you start to cut it, or else it will tear. Wet paper tears, it doesn't cut. So we're going to do the same measurements. On the 9-inch side, I'm going to cut this down to 2.5 inches. I'm going to get 3 2.5 by 12-inch strips. And then what I love about this is I have this, my scraps are already decorated. When I turn that on the 12-inch side, I'm going to cut to 3.5 inches, save those scraps. And now I'll have another 9 bases from this sheet. And they are different. but they're also like remarkably the same as far as like no matter which approach you choose, whether you choose to cut your ATCs first and watercolor them, or if you choose to watercolor first and then cut the paper down, I think no matter what, it was a successful play and the results I'm very keen on. So once everything was dried, I did divide my stacks between the two. So, and then I took my pre-cut ephemera little pieces here, and these were a printable that I printed on glossy photo paper that's not real thick. It's a kind of a thinner glossy photo paper. I have a bunch of it in my stash because I accidentally purchased it instead of my matte paper, and I'm determined to use it. Now, glossy photo paper will dull your trimmer blades, so I suggest scissors. I cut mine with scissors to protect my trimmer blade. And I just laid these out. Like this girl has the pink in her hair. And I'm going to show you right here. Don't just put wet glue on the back of glossy photo paper. I have a hack for you. So I have the silicone mat. You need to bring in a glue stick and then you can put wet glue behind that. It creates a barrier so your lines don't show through. If I just took that fine tip glue, wet glue, to this image, you would have seen my glue lines very pronounced, but this protects them. So you might see them a little bit, but not very much. And I ended up deciding when I was gluing to just do the perimeter with the wet glue. So just go around the edge like I did there. And it was kind of my surefire way not to have glue lines. So being that I'm using this kind of paper, this is what I needed to take into account. And I wanted to share that little tip with you. I am using this Dollar Tree stamp set. I shared it in a haul and I made it's like 7 cards in a flash with it. And I brought it back in and I'm stamping it on the bottom, sides, tops, wherever I want. And here are my 18 cards. I'm 18 cards closer to my goal, which is exciting. I need 150 cards and I'm at 76 now. I've got a ways to go. I'm halfway there. I'll make as many as I can. But I love these. I really love these backgrounds. I love it with the metallic. So some of them have like gold metallic, others have that pink metallic, but when it's all said and done, I can't pick a favorite as far as the backgrounds were concerned. I really liked both. It's a very freeing process, so if you feel like you need a more freeing process, I really suggest that you give it a try. I think that these backgrounds were kind of the perfect touch for these boho girl images. I will leave that printable linked down below for you. It's from Etsy, in case you're just really drawn to them. Now I printed these girls 2 copies to a page. These, if you print them just as the file comes to you, they will be much larger. In fact, they'll be twice as large. But they're just beautiful. And I wanted them to be smaller because I wanted to do some mixed media backgrounds on them. But yeah, I just really love, I think it's hard to pick a favorite, but I do think these are some of my favorite ATCs that I've made so far for paper Ganza to give away. Artist trading cards are a great way to share something handmade when you go to a crop or a scrapbooking event or an artist retreat or just anywhere. You can keep them in your purse and give them when you're out and about in your community and you need to say thank you to someone or you want to lift someone's spirits. I always like to have a few artist trading cards in my wallet for that reason. Or if, I get to talking to someone and I share with them that I have a channel or, whatever. They're great business cards, thank you cards, random act of kindness cards, trading cards as they're designed. See the pink here and how that palette really worked with some of the images. Also, though they're tiny, they are mighty. You can use them as a jumping off point for cards. So this is a A2 card, which is a note card. And they could be a perfect focal point if you don't feel like you would ever want them in the smaller form. And then you could take a design like this, stamp the background, add some patterned paper, whatever you want, and fill up an A2 card very easily with an artist trading card. Well, I hope you're feeling inspired by now, and I thank you for all your time, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.